Elevator systems. Bowen family systems theory in brief for a life of learning. Welcome to Elevator Systems, where we look at ideas and concepts from Bowen Theory in brief and understandable ways. My name is Dixie Vandersluys, and this is my cat, Dishwasher. Katie White is with us. Who do you have with you, Katie?
This is my dog, Lulu.
And Kathleen Cotter Cauley is joining us again by Dishwasher. Kathleen, who do you have with you today?
This is Gracie, and she's being bribed.
And if you can't tell, today we are talking about our relationship with pets. The Bowen community is really great at thinking about animals and their functioning and looking at how other natural systems operate. But I don't think I had ever thought about pets in relationships and how that shows up until, Kathleen, you were on our season 2 episode about triangles and you gave a guide dog example. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say today. Can I give a very brief bio before I...
You can do whatever you want.
Okay. So Kathleen Cotter Cauley is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice in Virginia and Florida. She's a faculty member at the Bowen Center and was involved in founding the Florida Family Research Network. And especially pertinent for this episode, Kathleen has worked with guide dogs for over 30 years. So welcome back, Kathleen, and give us your pitch if you like.
Thank you. Well, and we're going to talk about pets in the family, dogs and cats and other animals that people might be thinking about. But my pitch would be the word reciprocity, and that animals have so much to teach us, and they're a window to observe life as well as the functioning in our own family units. And so it's almost an opportunity every day to have Bowen Theory in action right in your living room. And some people in the animal world call this both ends of the leash, so that what goes on with the handler or the owner of the dog or cat has an impact on the animal, and the animal certainly has an impact on the family. So I'd like to have people thinking about reciprocity today and our part as humans in relating to our furry friends.
Great.
Thanks,
Katie.
Kathleen. I think I read a book that was called The Other Side of the Leash before I got my dog. Maybe we'll find that one. So I, interestingly, had a hard time with this one and thinking about how I wanted to define it, even though I knew dogs, as you saw, were an important part in my life. So I just thought the thing that was useful to me in thinking about pets and the family is just to think about their impact and position within the emotional system. I do believe that they are a factor in the family emotional system when they join, when they leave, the position that they hold. Even I can think of family pets that have been really important in our family over the years and still hold that space in memory in our family unit. So I thought about that. And like all people and individuals and a part of the emotional systems, there's useful things. They're soothing, they're calming to the system, but they can also produce stress in the system and tension and reactivity. So I said, one of the things I just wanted to throw out that the pet is a part of that emotional system. And I think that's a consideration that people should take into when they're thinking about it. It's been a wonderful place to watch my own functioning. At times I move closer and further away with the dog. If I am slowing down enough to just take a picture of what's happening around me, to watch how my dog is a part of that system. So it's more general. I might get into examples that I can tease this out, but I just wanted to name that I think that pets are a part of the family emotional system. All right, Dixie.
All right, my turn. One idea in Bowen Theory is watching how anxiety moves through a relationship system. And Roberta Gilbert, I don't remember which book it's from, but she has a great quote that says, "Calm is catching just as is anxiety." And animals are a great way to observe the movement of anxiety in a situation. You just have to look at their ears. Also, I wonder how my cat knows when I'm picking her up to take her to the vet versus just picking her up to snuggle, because she definitely knows the difference. There's lots of research about how animals are helpful for regulating our nervous system, sort of on an individual level, but I think Bowen Theory adds that in between people view. And there's so many things that I'm sure we'll get into today that people can observe about what's going on between themselves and others when there's a pet in the picture. So that's where my brain went. For other pitches this episode, I have a quote. It's actually the same quote I think I did from your other episode, Kathleen, on triangles, but it's from Family Therapy and Clinical Practice. The basic building block of an emotional system is the triangle. In calm periods, two members of the triangle have a comfortable emotional alliance, and the third, in the unfavored outside position, move towards winning the favor of the other or towards rejection. In tension situations, the outside is in the favored position, and both of the emotionally over-involved ones will predictably make efforts to involve the third. And I think maybe today we're thinking about having a pet in the middle there. There was a great article that we found out about through the Murray Bowen Archive Project, and it's called Pets in the Family by Alan Enton. And so here's a quote. Pets are an important part of the emotional life of the family. Decisions from when and how to introduce a pet into the family, what kind of pet to get, questions about the role a pet plays in the emotional life and relationship system of its members, from stabilizing shaky marriages to teaching young children about responsibility and death, from preparing young couples for the transition to parenthood to issues about who gets the animal at the time of divorce. This was interesting. When considering the role of the companion animal in the family, he's considering triangles here. Sometimes these triangles may even provide eerie clues about the future. One snapshot showed a lawyer hugging his two children tightly at a distance from his wife. The dog was in an affectionate embrace with the wife. And a few months later, to everyone's shock, the happy couple split up. He won the legal battle for joint custody of the youngsters, and the dog stayed with the wife. So even the article talks about who gets the pictures taken and how is the configuration. And then finally, one from Dr. Kerr. The calm or harmony in one relationship can be maintained by the conflict in another relationship. And then Alan Enton comments, which may be why many a frustrated worker comes home and kicks the dog. So moving that anxiety. All right, those are the pitches.
Oh, anxiety is so contagious, and the animals will track it. Really, they will track it. And I think so many times that people don't think about what the animal plays. You know, people will say, I want the bond, I want the closeness with the dog. And the dog arrives in the family goes to one of the kids. And
right.
How does a dog decide who to go to? People will say, well, it's the one that feeds them, it's the one that walks them. It is all of that. But I think it's also, what is the emotional field that the dog is entering and responding to? And then how do they move in the system? So sometimes the family gets into an over involvement in, I'm going to decide who is attached to this dog. And that's a basic ignoring of biology and physiology and the contagiousness of anxiety. And it depends on who the animal is.
Yeah.
You can have we had 6 Labradors in my life with my husband, and usually 2 at a time. And they were very predictable. You know, they were well behaved. Some were from the guide dog school. And they added an energy to the family that is very different than the rescue dog that we have now. She's a border collie lab. She made a short appearance at the beginning of the show. Her name is Tracy. And she spent 1 year in Puerto Rico before she came to us, and had a very wired up nervous system. And so she has taken the lead, and we have followed her lead of safety and comfort. And we always say, if you ignore her, you will be in her club very quickly. But if you try to engage her, then it's on her terms. So it's a whole different experience based on who the animal is that joins the system.
Yeah. I was thinking one of my examples is my husband teases me all the time because I really wanted a cuddly dog. So from the time the dog was little, I had her on the couch with me, cuddling. And I forgot that I'm a person who likes some distance from time to time. And so I watch how this dog will come and approach me and want the cuddles. And she's very demanding, will kind of put her little paw up. And I think, how this is me. Some part of me is not regulating that. I know I want a little bit of space, and here's this dog coming towards me.
Good example. It's a good example. And what the expectation was upon her arrival was that you'll get that all the time.
Yeah.
And then what does the owner do when and to your point, Katie, everything that dogs do is signal. They are not about words. They are about quick correction. And go to a dog park, I always say to people, and watch how to be a parent. It's quick. It's a little, it's a little, it's a little, it's not lots of words, lots of talking. Animals just relate with quick response.
Yeah.
And so at home, I think they do that too. Like, what's the signal when your dog knows that you are needing space? What is the human's awareness that the dog is looking for signal?
Yeah.
So there's lots of ways to see examples about human life with our animals.
So much teaching. I appreciated that article. I hope we can figure out a way to post it so that people can access it. Even just thinking about, he talked a little bit about the child projection process showing up in a dog, how people really project, I think, Kathleen, that's what you're saying, project these ideas on the dog, and the dog is a part of that system. So how is the reciprocity going there? And the dog is responding to that. Very interesting.
You can get an immature marriage, an immature partnership where the dog is used all the time in the projection process. Tell mommy that I'm mad at her. As opposed to, can we talk? I'm kind of mad here. And so it's a very common part of family life. And I would argue that all the 4 patterns, when anxiety is up, come out to play. And you can watch them in your animals. You can watch the projection process. You can watch conflict triangles and distance. You watch the ears go back. You watch the tail go down. And I will often say to people, what does your dog do when you're fighting? I don't know. Like, this is a big, huge research lab into your functioning.
Right.
And you're missing the opportunity. The dog runs out of the room half the time. People are fighting. They don't even know that dog is gone.
Yeah.
The dog will let you know, hey, this is getting a little out of hand here.
Or get in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah.
To calm it down. That's right.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Katie? What are you thinking about that one?
Well, that's what I was thinking about, the ways the dog with my child, she can come in and kind of, if there's a little conflict going on between us and the child, the dog will kind of choose that time to jump in the center, and not in a defensive way or anything, just in a look at me. And I find that so fascinating.
Yeah. One of the examples in that article was a couple where the dog always slept in the bed with them. And he talks about it. I think his words are, their love making was limited by the presence of the dog. And then the dog died suddenly. And what do they notice? And they were separated shortly after that, because suddenly the emotional, physical distance that was there, that was, could be seen because the dog was in the middle.
Yeah.
Wasn't just the dog.
Yeah.
I had a opportunity one time. My husband was on what's called a detail, and we were living in Florida, and he was traveling up here to Virginia. So he'd be gone 2 weeks and home 2 weeks. And we had a dog named Zipper, who was from the guide dog school. He was the smartest dog we've ever had. He was the father of 68 guide dogs, and he would go down to the school when they needed him to breed. He had the best job going. So we went to the school and said, what is he going to do without Mac? I mean, Mac had been his main man for 2 years. And they just looked at my husband and said, it's only the closest biscuit. Don't worry about it. And I thought, oh, there's this bond. Are you kidding me? It's about who's going to feed them. And so every other week, my husband would come in and out of the house. Every time this happened, it was the greatest window I think I've ever had. I would drive to the airport. My husband was in the passenger seat. Zipper was in the well. My husband would get out of the car. The dog would follow him with his eyes until he couldn't see him anymore. He would whip his head around, get up on the seat, turn to me, put his hand on my shoulder like, he's gone. I got you covered now.
Oh,
It was, the triangle was gone. And he knew I was going to be there to give him his whatever. And every single time that pattern would repeat itself. I'm like, oh, I told Mac, and you think you're so important.
how interesting.
Yeah.
Do I have the opposite story? I mean, cats are a whole different, I think, world, but my husband was away and the cat would sleep on my husband's shirt, the whole time that he was away. And somehow the cat knows, because I really, really want to snuggle the cat and for the cat to love me. And this cat, as soon as we have company, I say, if you don't want her near you, she will want to be near you. That is her. She just knows the person who likes cats the least.
Well, I mean, if we think about the patterns, these 4 patterns that play out under conditions of anxiety, they're always there. But when the family anxiety's up or the reactivity's up, the patterns are more visible. And one of the favorite ones to watch is the doorbell. So the doorbell rings, and think of the family as an emotional unit, which is one of the main concepts in the theory. And there's a heightened energy when the doorbell rings. Who is it? Are you going to get it? No, you get it. Oh, wait, I'll get it. No, you get it. And so what happens? Somebody goes to the door. The dog goes to the door. The dog barks. And then the family member says, stop barking. Well, the family created that barking with the energy in the unit about who's at the door.
Yeah.
Now, if people know these things from the time they get a puppy, they will not get all worked up when the doorbell rings. And they will not reprimand the dog for barking or jumping on the like, don't jump on that person that just arrived. And the whole family's been jumping around. So, this is what I mean by
I was
teaching
thinking
us.
I was thinking it's the example of like when the child swears for the first time.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And you have to restrain the laughter and the yeah. I was thinking my example was we have a close relationship with our breeder because my dog has had puppies. So she's on the other side of that spectrum, has had when we chose her. So I thought it was interesting to think about this from so many levels. Is the breeder is longstanding, really thoughtful, and chooses based on these dogs' personalities, what she senses, before 6 weeks, begins to choose which dog to match with which family. She wants to know the family, know what their needs are, and then works to match the dog, and liked our dog a lot. So when the breed came out, she said, I really like this girl. I wanted a girl. She's, and so she kept her within the breeding program, which I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity. My child can learn about this. And it's been, I don't know if my child has learned anything. I've learned so much about the process that goes into it, my assumptions about putting human feelings on the dog around parenting and birthing and all that process, which has been interesting to watch how the breeder is just like, she's a dog. They do it different. They're not doing it the same way you're doing it. They have different ways of going about these things. And I thought, because my dog lost a puppy. So when she gave birth, one of the puppies didn't make it. So I said, is the dog, do you think she's grieving? Do you think there's a way? And she's like, well, nature just needs to move on. And it has a way where she has these other children she has to pay attention to and help thrive. So she said she's never seen it where she notices that the dog has this process of grieving. But I just have learned so much. The other thing that has been so useful in conversations with her is to talk about mothers she perceived to be good mothers and mothers that are challenged in the breeding process. She said she's done this for so long. There's mothers who are attentive and interested, and there's those that sort of have the babies and think, well, I'm not really that interested in doing this. And to be having conversations about what she thinks goes into that. And so just, it's been so interesting to watch and learn from being that close kind of to another species and the work that goes into that.
Well, and having someone like that who's knowledgeable about animals. And I think, what would Bowen Theory say, having the importance of having principles. And one of the principles can be they're dogs.
Yeah.
Or as my friend always used to say, they lived in caves for thousands of years. Don't worry about them. I mean, to your point about humans putting their emotion on these animals, it doesn't help the animal. Yeah. In fact, it can be overwhelming. So how do we think about differentiation of self, giving the animal room to think, as you were saying, Katie? If you need space, so do animals sometimes. Families will come at them with too much information or too many commands. Stop, stop, stop. You can see this on the walk.
Yeah.
You'll see owners. Oh, Fido, no, don't do that. No. And it's like white noise. The dog does not hear that voice repeating itself. And then you'll see the owner that goes, stop, stop. Nope, no. So how do we think about the principles around differentiation of self, toleration, waiting, giving the animal time to think about the command that's just been given them? If the owner is repeating that command 10 times, dog tunes out. It's like, oh, what's wrong with them? So how do we really learn about the species, cats, dogs, whatever animal is in our home, how they operate, and that they are animals at heart. They're not human.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And to watch that reciprocity with the owner. I mean, the other thing that being close to this breeder has given me the opportunity to watch different dogs' responses to their owners. She's got them in this pretty structured system for 8 weeks of their life. So it is a good test to say these dogs come out with similar rearing for the first 8 weeks of their lives. And then what happens? What's the diversity that develops as they go out in the world in different households? I think it's super interesting to watch. And she'll talk about dogs that, like you said, that they get overly focused on the dog or more punitive. And she'll watch this dog come back because she makes them come back for their groomings. And she'll watch this dog come back for its first grooming with a very, different personality, different nervous system reactivity. I'll say it that way instead of personality than it left with. And she talks about how much information that can give her about the environment that this dog's. And she'll ask the question, have you done this to the dog? And they're like, how did you know that?
Wow, she sounds terrific.
So much learning has happened for me with this lovely lady.
Even being responsible enough to stay in touch with the families.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of this work with the guide dogs. When a person starts to lose their sight, they can become very dependent on a family member for visual cues and holding the arm, etc. And there's great variation in families around maturity and stepping into these functions that are necessary. If someone has diabetes or somebody has any kind of physical diagnosis where they do need some assistance from the family. And so at some point, a family gets to the point where the person with the visual impairment says, I think I'm ready now for a guide dog. But this family member has been helping them for quite a long time. And there's great variation in some family members will say, terrific, I'll get my life back, you'll get your life back. Others will feel it as a loss of functioning and get much more anxious about the arrival of the dog. So the member goes down to the guide dog school for 28 days alone. And this process that you're talking about, Katie, this matching process, I don't know how they know all the things they know, but they're matching these dogs with humans all the time. And after 28 days, then there's this connection with the dog and the person who's visually impaired. And then they go home, this team. But the school follows them, just as your breeder follows you. because it's a triangle.
Yeah.
And now we go back into the home, but there's this dog now, and I'm relying on the dog for everything. And the dog is expecting that I be reliant for everything. Now, what happens to that family member that
Right.
is missing their function
Yeah.
or is delighted? And then the anxiety is much lower in the house and everybody's happy and there's this dog and the person has their freedom back. So yeah, it's a really fascinating part of watching.
Yeah, and watching the variation. I appreciate that. It's this little experiment of watching the variation. And the part that I was thinking about that's similar to your story and my story with the breeder is also the resource. I think triangles can also really demonstrate resources. And so staying connected to these other folks, my breeder, this guide dog community, they are resources to the unit, that family unit that they can access for information or support or yeah, it widens the system a little bit. I thought that maybe that some other pet owners don't have as much access to.
And I think Bowen Theory is a resource to people who are learning theory and also have animals. Two things. I've always put animals on the family diagram, and there's always conversation among people about whether they should be on there or not. And I've never cared whether they should be because I believe they are part of the family emotional field. So I put them on because I think it tells when they enter, when they leave, what's happened in the family, when they die, what's happening in the family. And theory would say that, one of the ways that nodal events are present is entries and exits. And a dog is an entry. And then all the triangles activate. Every relationship in the family changes upon arrival and departure of a dog.
Yeah.
It's pretty profound.
Kathleen, do you think it differs any with the age of the other members of the family? I was thinking about, I think dogs always, or cats will have a significant role, or even the hamster, or for children. I appreciate that article. They might be the first place children learn about death, but I've been interested even in my own household where some like sibling rivalry stuff came up where those triangles were active. So I was curious if you had any thinking about the timing of the entrance of the pet.
The timing in terms of where the family is?
Yeah, developmentally.
Well, I'd be interested in what you're thinking when you ask that. I don't really have thinking about that, but you seem like you have something there.
Well, I was just wondering if when a pet comes in before children,
okay,
into a system during children or after children have launched, how that pet may serve different functions in that system. I don't know. I haven't thought it out clearly, but that was one of the things when you were talking that question came up for me. Is there, not that there's the perfect time, but I think that the context would create different.
Yeah, I'm thinking triangles, the number of triangles available to any of us in a family of 8 siblings or 1 sibling, or as kids go off to college. And, what happens if the one the dog is most attached to goes off to college? Then what does the dog do? If the dog is a dog, they find another bed to sleep in. But then they remember that child when they come home, who's that young adult when they do come back. The timing, too, that you ask about, I'm always interested in when dogs leave the system, when they die. What goes into the readiness of a family, or the family is involved in a lot of intense medical care and the dog dies. At what point does the dog step away and say, you don't need this, this is enough, and I'm ready to? I don't know. What happens when the focus moves off the dog to the medical care that's now needed and the dog is watching? A lot of it's a mystery, but I'm always watching.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the different opinions of family members about the level of care, the level of money put into how long to keep a pet who is ill. The other cat that we have, you saw Big Fat Dishwasher here at the start. We have another cat who has a thyroid condition and can't gain weight. Between the two of them, they'd be a perfectly healthy cat, I think.
There's the
But
reciprocity.
right. But there's all sorts of options for treatment. And how do my husband and I navigate that in terms of what we can financially afford? And my husband always says, well, this was a farm cat, so we don't need to put money into it. And I'm like, well, we got it for free, so we can put money into it. So
It's an important
yeah.
question, Dixie. Very important.
Mhm.
It can be extremely expensive. And you know what all goes into that.
Yeah.
If some kind of medical incident happens to a younger dog, I think people are often going to put more
Right.
money in than if it's an older dog. But you're right, the options are multiple and many. And so it activates
Yeah.
a number of things. That the anxiety is always up about, is this animal going to survive? Will I be at fault if they don't? How much do I do? Can we afford
Yeah.
it? And it activates so many patterns in the family, the life of the family. How do
Mhm.
people think about money?
Yeah.
And do you take a loan out to pay for a $8,000 surgery? Those are not small
Yeah.
questions.
I was thinking of that. And then, you know, this element of people who adopted pets over COVID, and that interesting thing about when people went back to the office. You know, I've sat with clients who this discomfort of the dog cannot be left at home by themselves, and
Mm.
the choosing different jobs, and the anxiety, eliciting others so that the dog doesn't have to spend time, and just watching that intensity, that intense anxiety that can produce in the individual.
Oh, and in the dog, and what did we do to our animals
Mm.
during that time? Dogs are mostly meant to be alone and like to sleep a good part of the day, and all of a sudden, yeah, that could be another whole
Hmm.
Episode.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys have takeaways for people? Things to think about, observe?
I would like to. We had some conversation ahead of this about whether there was anything written. Evidently, Dr.
Mm.
Bowen, I haven't seen any letters, but evidently, a family member said that he used to write some to them about the animals. They always had animals. The description that was given was that he was very aware of dogs and cats being part of the family emotional process, the family emotional system. But he didn't use theoretical terms. Like when I was presenting on aging pets and triangles, I said, did he ever talk about the triangles? I went to former faculty
Mm.
who knew him, and because I only met him twice, I didn't know him. Well, he didn't use the terms in the family, was what I gathered. You just knew it was there. We just knew and understood, is what this family member said. We just knew it. And I think that was just part of how he functioned. But he didn't talk about the 8 concepts of Bowen Theory in the family with regard to the animals. And so the rest of us have to figure this out. And I think being certain about what we see.
Yeah.
And it is a theory, and adding our knowledge to the theory, and not just saying, well, Dr. Bowen never said that, doesn't mean that the theory isn't open to all kinds of ways that animals and humans relate in a family setting. And I think that's what we're attempting today.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Kathleen. I think my takeaway was really to kind of extend what you just said, that I do believe that pets are a part of the emotional system. And I think they're just another way to observe functioning. I have found there's something different about thinking about the dog's position that gets me a little more neutral, or
Mm.
objective, maybe a little bit more objective about being able to observe, that I lose maybe more with the humans in my system. So I've really appreciated, I mean, all of my family members have dogs, so it's just a really useful way to watch how different systems work. So I think my takeaway as often is to go out and observe and include them in your observations, because I do think they're an important source of information.
And I think, you're reminding me that in this stirred up world that we're all in right now, I, from the beginning, said to Gracie, who has a very calm nervous system now, most of the time, I promise you that I will not raise my voice about politics in this house. And boy, she'll tell me if I do. And so there is that fairness to the dog too. When families are getting riled up about whatever, how fair is that to an animal with a already stirred up nervous system? Not so responsible.
Yeah.
Dixie, I think I jumped in.
Mine was watch the anxiety move, from my pitch, that a function of anxiety is to alert us and to have us adapt. And I thought, what can you notice more objectively and loosely when you observe how your pets manage anxiety versus maybe how you manage anxiety? How can that be useful to your own thinking about yourself? And then I guess what I've really appreciated in this whole conversation today is it is looking at the animals, how they sort of function in themselves, looking at how we relate to the animal, and then looking how the animal impacts how we relate in our families. Like all of those three areas have been highlighted today. I think it's so interesting.
I was thinking, Dixie, in our preseason, I was talking about that intro that Dr. Bowen talked about, maybe looking at relationships through the lifespan is one way to help us get more focused on the system as a unit versus looking at the individual. And I think, that's what we're all talking about today is maybe there is something about looking at pets that allow us to really get that stadium, more of that systemic reciprocal view of relationships versus just looking at the behavior of the pet or the behavior of the human.
Yeah, and really seeing the family as an emotional unit. The dog will point the way.
Yeah.
With our eyes on ourselves, not on the other.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Always great.
My favorite topic. I couldn't say no.
Great. Well, and I hope people have taken some ideas to think about and observe as you go out into your relationships. This podcast is produced by Living Systems, a nonprofit organization in Vancouver offering counseling and training programs in Bowen family systems theory across Canada.